Freedom Fighters, I'm back with another one. Well, today's topic is going to be where did it all go wrong? And this is something that I've pondered for a while, and I was sitting here thinking about it once again and figured I'd make it a video. And I guess we'll start out at 1776, where some have even said, that's where it all went wrong. And so I was sitting here thinking about all these different points in American history and which one was the destruction of the country or which one led us to where we are at here today. Um, and actually, I'm not sure if I should start this at the beginning or kind of do a countdown. I was thinking about it as like if you go back in time and you take a certain event, you can say, well, was the country, all rainbows and butterflies before that? So I guess we'll start from current times, and I guess we'll start at 2020, which was, the C-19 event that shut down schools and businesses, and all the tyrannical procedures that came out because of that. Um, so was that it? Is that what led us to where we're at today? I mean, I know it definitely caused financial strife in the economic systems, and that always causes greater problems, not just American but world strife and stuff like that. So, but I don't think the world was in great shape before that either. So if we go back, even further, we have the '08 recession. And is that what destroyed the country? And then a little before that, we have social media, which was definitely a big factor. I mean, that was, I guess, '04, '05, '07, '08, around there. All through that period right there was kind of when I was growing up as a teenager and having MySpace and stuff like that. And man, we had no clue where it was headed, did we? And that's definitely led to a lot of problems. So I can definitely see social media leading to, the destruction of our country. But again, before that, it wasn't all uh, hunky dory or whatever. So of course we have September the 11th, and that brought us the wonderful Patriot Act, and we went to war over things that it really wasn't about, and we went places that we shouldn't have and done things that we shouldn't have. Um, and all that, but don't trust me. Always do your own research. But was that the turning point? And yeah, we got TSA and all these unconstitutional things sprouted from that event. And before that, I mean, the country was pretty well off. I mean, thinking about that, if you were growing up in the '80s and '90s, I mean, it was like pretty much like one of the most peaceful, I guess, time periods in America. And I guess ignorance was bliss. We didn't really know much about it, and it was like the last generation again. No social media, no internet. We played outside with sticks and stones, and make believe was the how we did things back in the day. And I'm not saying we didn't have toys or anything. I mean, Tonka trucks, and you know what I mean. But you played out in the dirt, and you made stuff up, and you played cowboys and Indians in the woods, and um, all kinds of stuff. And before that, you kind of have to take a jump all the way to maybe JFK in the '60s. And there was a recession there, I think, like in the '80s, mid to late '80s, there was a recession. But any big events, I think you have to go skip back to JFK. And I think MLK was right there too, but I can't remember if that was right before or right after, but they happened in a somewhat similar time period. But the have to be careful with the using the A word there, but the deletion of a president is a pretty big thing. And you know a lot of people in our community, liked him. And Democrats, I think, meant something a little different back in that day. Um, you could possibly see yourself maybe voting for someone like that. A lot of things he talked about secret societies and, um, the government as a whole, definitely jive with me, definitely in my thought process. But, and then moving back from there, you have World War II, which I'm not going to, relitigate that whole thing, or I might do a separate video on that. But as always, do your own research and believe whatever you want to believe about that. But, was World War II the end of our country? Is it where it all went wrong? Now, whether or not whatever you believe about that war, it actually sprouted, pretty good times for our country, and that's usually how wars go. And that's why, the military-industrial complex just continues to chip away. And I think they said that our country hasn't ever gone like 20 or 40 years without a war or something like that. So, and previous to World War II, you got the 19th Amendment, which I know many people have said, have spurred kind of what kicked off things going wrong. And if you don't know what the 19th Amendment is, that's women's rights. And that kind of kicks back to social media. And look where that's led. And I listen to a lot of like Undead Chronic and Hammer Hand and stuff like that. And you often hear them call people like first wave feminists, and comparing them to the ones we have today, which, in 1920, I believe that's what that was, or 1919, but I'm confusing it with the 19th Amendment. But yeah, I think it was in the 20s. First wave feminism was a whole different thing compared to what it is today. Um, and you look at people like the swimmer, I think it was Riley Gain, and these people out here fighting for women's rights and stuff, and they're getting smacked down by the so-called new age feminists, which is just, ridiculous. And they want, men in their locker room and stuff like that. That's not what they were fighting for in the 1920s. But yeah, I mean, where we're at now with social media and the filth and degeneracy that goes on in that realm, um, it's taken up a whole new meaning. Feminism and all that. It's on another level. So is that, women's right to vote and, put their word into politics and all this stuff? Is that where it all went wrong? I mean, you decide. I'm not gonna say anything on that. But and then, right before that, we had World War One. Again, do your research. World War One isn't as interesting as World War Two, at least in my mind. And it necessarily wasn't even an American thing, as in its title, World War, which it wasn't even called that in the beginning. The World Wars, before they knew it was a World War, I think it was the Great War. Um, but yeah, and then I mean we have the Federal Reserve getting created, and that's a big one. 1913, where your whole banking system got overhauled and changed up. And man, was it? I think it's Thomas Jefferson. I don't know how it just drew a blank there, because he's like one of my favorite presidents. I think he was the one that said, if you allow your country to be taken over by banks, your children will wake up, homeless with nothing on the land that their fathers conquered. And that's pretty much where we end up today. And I mean, definitely look into that. And I plan on doing future videos into that, Jekyll Island, and how that whole situation was came about, and how they've pretty much swindled and robbed the American populace. And then previous to that, you got the Civil War, of course. And I think I've done previous videos on that and kind of my opinion there. And I definitely think that's one of the turning points of where this country really went wrong. Um, and it's not because of slavery and the whole thing. I've definitely touched on this before. I don't believe in that. That was definitely wrong, but I think it would have worked its way. It would have phased its way out eventually. It would have changed. But what I think the Civil War accomplished is I think Lincoln was a tyrant, and it gave you the overreaching, all powerful, tyrannical government we face today. That's what spurred it. I mean, they won the Civil War. The federal government started their gigantic, growing spurt. And then again, what we just went over, 40 something, 50 years later, 1913, they create a bank and basically sell out the nation. Um, yeah, and actually, I think it was a little before that in 1871. Yeah, so the Civil War ended, I think the official declaration or whatever, when it was like at 64, 65. And then in 1871, America became a corporation instead of a country. So, yeah, I mean, after the Civil War was over, the federal government took over, turned the country into a corporation, and then 1913 sold your country out to the banks. So everything you've been living in previous, and your father has been living in, even previous to our lifetime, has been a fake country. It hasn't been the country that your founders founded. Um, and then you go back to that, like I said, the revolution and stuff like that. And I've had conversations with people who will tell you from the very beginning, it was the Masons and stuff like that, and it was all um, just ill will from the very beginning. I'm not sure I buy that whole thing. I mean, the founding fathers were Masons in the founding fathers, but whether or not they were planning to make some slave colony or something, who knows? But that's where we ended up, didn't we? Um, but I feel like from that period to the Revolution to the Civil War, I mean, those people lived relatively free lives. And of course, there was time periods. I didn't cover everything, and in between, you had the Spanish American War in there, and what was the other one? You had a bunch of different stuff. I didn't even mention the Great Depression, different stuff like that. So there was definitely moments in history that we didn't cover here. I didn't go every single point, but let me know what you think. Um, where did it go wrong? What was the biggest point in history where you think that was where America got screwed up? And then, it's like, where did we go wrong and where are we headed? That's the question. Where is the future? Are we headed? And like I said, I believe we're already in the second Civil War if we're not headed there. And I didn't even mention the what happened in January after the election, because to me it's not even really an event, but you know how the media plays it up and everything is, it's the biggest thing from the Civil War. It's because they're trying to play up the Civil War that's coming. They know it's coming, so they're trying to get ahead of it and crack down on you and I is basically what it comes down to. But and leads to everything of where we're going, man. But that's probably where I'm gonna leave it, and I'll do another video on where I think we're going as well. So yeah, let me know, and as always, for the next one, we are on our own. No one's coming to save us, so get right with God, because only God can save you. Freedom Fighters out.